Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is June 7th, 2021. If you're tuning in from YouTube and watching this as a recording, we invite you to join us live for these meetings. We meet every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. The Zoom link is found within the agenda, and the agenda should be posted within the YouTube recording description as well for easy access. If you're unable to attend the community meetings, we also have Carvel office hours, which are every second and fourth Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And those are just an opportunity to bring any discussion items up or anything you need more in-depth help on from the team. You can attend those to bring those up to the team. And we ask that when you're attending either to read and abide by our code of conduct, which is listed here at the bottom of the description for the community meeting. Excuse me. Also, when you're attending these meetings, please put your name in the area here so we know who is attending, and if you represent any organization that's using Carvel, please list that as well. For the announcements today, it says here, we have software engineer opportunity. Looks like we're recruiting in need of a software engineer for the team. Aaron, do you want to do any sort of?
Yeah, I think like this is a really cool opportunity. It's part of the Path Forward program, but what this software engineer role is, it's a returnship. So similar to an internship of it's an 18-week I guess duration of this role, and we're targeting folks that have at least 5 years of professional experience, but have recently taken time off with like the primary reasoning of caregiving for someone. So yeah, really excited about this. And if you're interested or know anyone that is interested, please let them know.
Cool, that's really interesting. The next thing we released YTT version 0.34. Check out the release notes here. Does anyone want to go into detail about this particular release?
Yeah, big part of this stuff is rounding out the feature set for getting feature complete with schema. We still have some more work. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the other big piece here is a new feature where we include a new flag in order to accept just plain YAML as data values. This is a bit of a little pre-release. This is targeted at integrators, so people who are using YTT in their own tooling. And we're excited about eventually making this more of a first-class feature, but you could still go take a look and start using that today.
Great, thank you. All right, monthly roadmap review. We do a roadmap review every the first community meeting of the month. We would have done it last week, but we were off for a holiday for the US, so we are doing it this week. Aaron, do you want to kick us off with this?
Sure. Yeah, if you scroll down this table, it's probably the most interesting thing to look at. But so right now, we are currently working on the YTT schema type checking functionality and targeting this month to release it. We'll certainly chat more about that during the status update portion of this meeting. But then as for what's coming next, we have export YTT schema as open API schema. And this is really so that users can export the YTT schemas into another format that is generally used, I would say, within other tools. So it's a way to increase interoperability. And within the Carvel scope, this definitely makes sense when thinking about kapp-controller and packaging APIs. The next item on here speaking of kapp-controller and the packaging APIs, is that the plan is to have a GA release, a published release in July. Things are moving well and on track for that. The next item is kind of one I just slid in as a placeholder, as once we get this kind of MVP version of these APIs out, I know that we'll have some enhancements, as with all our tools, just some regular enhancements. We haven't yet, I guess, like clearly scoped what the next following like releases or milestones may be yet, but there's lots of work there to be done. And then after that one, you can see we're getting a bit further out, talking about Q4. So there's schema validations, ways where we can make the configuration even easier, providing validations to users quicker. Image package pulling nested bundles, a way to filter, I would say, how you are pulling nested bundles to get performance improvements. And then there's another image package item, renaming images when copying bundles. So giving users a bit more control as to how images are renamed while copying them around. What's not really captured in here is I would say like a lot of the ongoing work around, I don't know, smaller bug fixes and enhancements, things that maybe don't fall into like a larger narrative necessarily. But those are always ongoing. And we also do have, I would say, some more general like open source community / project health type things that are going on behind the scenes, which also aren't necessarily called out here, but things that are still top of mind for us. But yeah, please, if you have any feedback or questions, this is a good resource to reference. And as always, these things are subject to change.
Thanks, Aaron. I do see also down here below, just say if you would like for the team to address any issues that are important to you, please don't hesitate to share them with the team. You can share directly in GitHub, or you can share on the Kubernetes workspace in the Carvel channel, or you can attend one of these meetings and bring it up to with the team there as well. Does anyone have anything else they want to share about the roadmap? Cool. Okay, status update. Aaron, you want to kick it on over for status updates and onward?
Sure. All right. So yeah, status updates, the accept data values as plain YAML, bit of work as John mentioned in the release notes for YTT has been completed and is usable if you want to try it out. Anything further you want to add there, John?
No, that's a good link. It actually also points to the overall proposal. So if you're wondering what this is about, you can follow that link and actually see like why are we doing this and all that in the approved proposal.
Cool. And then, yeah, as we mentioned, schemas are ongoing, currently beginning usability testing. Anything else that John, Carrie, anyone wants to add?
Yeah. So what does it mean? What's from here to done? What do we mean when we're sort of there but not? So there's like lots of documentation stuff that we're doing. There's nips and tucks in various features, and then like it's saying here, we're going to do a round of usability testing to get some early feedback and respond to that. We're pretty excited about this feature, and we want it to iron out any of the sort of the more obvious inconsistencies. So that's what that's all about.
Cool. Then the next item we have here is the package manager APIs. As I mentioned, these are still in flight. The team is imposing a code freeze at the end of this week. And that way, the next couple of weeks will be spent on, again, more of the stability and testing portion of the work. But everything is moving along there. And then the last item here is image package enhancements. And this was just a way to capture, again, some of the work that's been going on in the past week. I know Joao had worked on this generate location OCI image story. And I believe that it was merged. It hasn't yet been part of a release that I'm aware of, but that's something to keep an eye out for. As well as some, I guess we'll potentially talk today about what other sort of image package enhancements we're working on. Anything else? Any other updates from folks? All right, we'll dive in then. So let's start with YTT. I'll filter by schemas. And should we start with the V1 migration guide? Cool.
So we had taken a look at this last time we met, and what was missing was some kind of definition of scope. So I've refined this punch list and basically set the definition for this guide to be, hey, grab a non-trivial project, say like the example here pointing to is like CF for Kids that uses YTT, and do a partial migration, like do just enough of that in order to convince yourself that we've identified the most common steps required to make that migration happen. And the whole point of this is so that folks don't have to guess and say, well, I guess I need to do this and then maybe that, or change the wires there, and or somehow try to be led by error messages per se. Be nice to lay out ahead of them what that road is, but we don't need to be explaining every little possibility. So that's the spirit of this. It's intended to be another page in the documentation. Yeah. I think that's what I can think of. You want to take a minute to read through this and look at this? Point it.
Maybe just give me a thumbs up when you're ready for me to scroll down.
Any questions or a lot of little bullet points in there? Well, let's see what does folks do folks have enough information that they feel like they can put points on this? So carry digesting. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's give this a shot. 1, 2, 3. Cool. 3 2s and a 1. Anybody want to talk through what they see? Sources of complexity.
I put down a 1. I guess I didn't really see a lot of complexity, meaning these seem to be pretty procedural kind of rules that we want to document to like hold someone's hand in terms of using schemas instead of using, a C data values and just data values all the way through. So it just seemed like a very procedural approach to writing documentation. We know what the rules are. There's nothing to learn or explore. There's an alternate path, which is you can even just start with anything's permissible and we can gradually, help them along the journey of making it a bit more realistic or specific. So yeah, I put a 1, but I can also there's a lot of documentation. There's a large volume of work here entailed, and maybe that's why it should be a 2. But that's my reasoning for 1.
I also just want to call out, we do have schema docs now, like a gentle introduction and then a specification that maybe we can help use to aid us in this doc. So that might reduce the initial complexity.
Yeah, definitely expecting that we'll refer into the reference material for further reading on these things as well. Yeah. And knowing what we don't have to repeat because it's already been said. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. So a rough consensus was 2 points. Just taking its sweet time.
I guess. Okay, cool. Should we go to this next one then?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this was a chunk of work that we've peeled out from a prior story. There was like sort of a larger effort to make sure that we were showing at least what the but before we were actually not even showing anything about what we found in particular cases when we had a type mismatch error in schema. And we made a run at trying to, it turned out that part of the reason there was that the source line, like in this example, the item that is being type checked and failing the type check is not a chunk of YAML, it's a chunk of Starlark. So this is a dictionary that has a key foo and a value of a string of 4. And when the corresponding schema expected an integer. So we addressed the issue where we wanted to at least report that we had a type mismatch, but it was a much bigger chunk to actually somehow calculate and capture where we should attribute, from what line of source should we attribute this data value that's being overlaid in. So that's what this story is about. From sort of the end user's perspective, this is what we see today, which you can see that it's not terribly helpful. It at least tells us what was the type of the thing was found, but we don't have a line number, we don't have a file name, and so we want to improve that. So that's what this is about, is finding a way to attribute this value, even though it's not been parsed as a piece of YAML, to give it a source line, and with that, then be able to actually name the file from which that source line comes from. So hopefully you can see pretty clearly that this is going to be a pretty significant improvement. Do we have more than one example, or is this? Yes. And then, so then this other scenario is in not as bad, if you will, in terms of the user kind of being left wondering, scratching their heads. So we do at least name the key value, but we'd like to also capture the source line for when a value is being passed on the command line. Yeah.
One question about this is the first scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the fact that we're using this in a library, or is it the fact that we're using template replace that is preventing any line number?
Yeah, I believe it's the latter, Garrett. And I think that's the heart of what I believe the improvement will be, is until schema came along, there was no need to be concerned about whether or not template replace was injecting a full set of AST nodes. But with us type checking all the values that are coming out, now it's critical that everything that comes out of template replace is type checkable. So that means it has to be AST, and it has to be, and for these error messages, each of those nodes in the AST need to be assigned a position. So I think you're getting right at the heart of what I believe is the gap there. So we want a holistic solution to ensure that any value that gets template replaced in, sometimes that is from parsed YAML, and it's just fine. That's already AST. But sometimes, like in this case, the key part here is the combination of the template replace, and it's from a value that wasn't already AST, wasn't already nodes.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, if you say define a function in Starlark that returns a value, and then you use that function in your template somewhere, that also doesn't have a line number. So it might have something to do with like a value that's defined in Starlark doesn't have a position. I think that might be a more general thing.
Yep, that's perfect. I feel like the both of you just like named both key components here of where there's a gap. It's that a value is getting placed from Starlark. That's one key point. And the other is that it gets replaced in.
And in order to build this AST structure, when we, for our Starlark interpolated values, like, is that code that we can reuse somehow? Like, we're building ASTs in non-Starlark cases. Can we reuse that code, or is it pretty much customized? It's going to be like brand new code to build this AST structure.
It's a good question. I think that there's quite a bit of prior art around this, so there may be like some utility functions might be able to use. At the very least, there's prior art.
Okay, so it's more or less unknown, but at least we know there's prior art, and we may be able to reuse some things, maybe. Cool. And if it's like, well, building this AST is actually really gnarly and difficult or whatever, like, is there like another approach we can take? Maybe we don't print out template YAML, maybe we print out something else as a file name, and in the contents of the diff, we print out, something else. In the view rendering, when we render this error message, can we print out something else as well, just in case building an AST is too difficult? Or if we find ourselves, if it's just too difficult for an AST, we just live with this the way we're printing out errors.
Yeah, I think we would probably want to come back to the drawing board if we can't achieve this outcome.
Okay.
We should like raise a flag and say this is looking not feasible. And then, yeah, probably circle back and figure out together what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I remember we looked into this in a previous story. We did some work around adding positions for overlaid values. And the situation came up where values defined in Starlark don't have a position, and we considered changing it in that story. We found it was non-trivial, so we deferred it. So not sure exactly how difficult, but definitely non-trivial.
Cool. I'm going to call an audible here. I'm now looking at this as we're talking this over, and I can see a way of where we can just address the first scenario without needing to think about or touch the second scenario. So what do you say we throw two different points? We'll throw points on this first scenario, and then we'll narrow the scope of the story to just that first scenario. And then we'll have pointed the second one, and I'll pull that out into a separate story so we can have two smaller stories that probably would be addressed independently. Would that be okay? Okay, cool. So let's focus on this first one, the using Starlark to inject a data value when rendering a template. Cool. Get a sense for what is involved in that. Okay, 3, 2, 1, shoot. Okay, so three 2s and 1 3. Anybody want to talk about what they see?
I could go down to a 2. I pointed 3 because just pointing relative to other stories we pointed recently, this one seems to have a lot of unknowns compared. So I gave it an extra point for that.
No, Dennis? Okay. I was debating between a 2 and a 3 personally. So, okay.
Yeah, I stated a 2 just due to our recent swarm on YTT, given that all the engineers here have sufficient context on it. And specifically, like we've seen this scenario and tried to tackle it more than once. Keeps our context kind of fresh.
Cool. Okay. I got nothing to add. So rough consensus was 2. And then the data values flag here. So the essence of this one again is in capturing and storing in that a little bit of background. Hopefully this isn't explaining what people already know, but when data value flags are being processed, they get converted into a document by hand. We handcraft actually overlays for every single data value flag. Actually, under the covers gets converted into an overlay. So there is a spot to be able to put. That's why there's actually a number. There's a spot to put the number, and presumably that means that, well, if there's position, there's a spot to put the line. So hopefully this is something that you just take the values that you have available and craft up this source line.
Having that hint then, just hearing what you said might complicate that logic then. If we, this hint was very specific for, it knows that it's for, it came from a data value flag. So like if the hint's gonna add complexity, maybe just remove it.
What does the hint say? Update data value flag to comply with a expected schema type.
It's like, yeah, the issues with the data value flag.
Oh, I see. Yeah, leave that to the judgment of whoever's
Mm.
playing the story. It's kind of when you see sort of the end result, and you're messing around with it, see if you want to keep that hint or not.
I have a question here. So this value is passed in as a key value argument, and we're giving it, well, we're assigning it the line number 1. Are key value arguments always going to be line 1?
I guess so. Sorry, I don't mean to be coy. I mean, they are today, and I guess what maybe like for the sake of this story, the thing that we want to do is at the very least improve that part of the experience that like we're showing you, like make it just more super obvious what is the argument that is causing us trouble, that failed the type check. Now, seems like we have a pretty flexible means of being able to produce these error messages. So maybe there might be a better way to display a command line argument. And if you want to venture into that and it turns out, oh my gosh, this is super easy, then like, yeah, that would probably be a nice add. The whole spirit of doing this kind of thing is to make the central piece of where the I goes first familiar. It's the source that hopefully will be the place where the user will go to fix the problem. So an idealized world would be where somehow this looks like the command line, some display of the command line, like what I might look at to go and fix. But it's a little bit harder because at least here we have the literal input available. But here I'm not so sure that that's true. But not required for this story. Cool. All right, 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay. So the first one was a 2, right? And this one is a 1. Do you mind putting at least the maybe put a 3 on there, and I'll remember that the second one is a 1
Cool.
when I split it up.
All right.
Yeah, can we just touch on this one real quick?
Sure. Oh, the remove.
remove. Yeah. I just wanted to show an edit. I realized after we pointed it that we didn't have a section to remind folks to just remove mention of the flag. So this is one of those things where it's like changing the code, you want corresponding change in documentation. And the scope of this is very small. It's just if we mention anywhere the enable experiment schema flag, this is just remove that. That's it.
That changes it to from a 2 to a 3. Just kidding.
Pipe down. But there was some additional documentation changes that we felt like could be really valuable. So if there's no objection outside of Dennis's humor, this is still a 2, but just like, make a couple of edits there. Cool. And then Aaron, just kind of like, so then there are 2 more stories here that are just purely about making that documentation improvement. So these are just pointers to those things. We've got enough backlog, it seems like, for the week, so we don't have to point these, but just to let you know that these are present.
Cool. Any other questions, comments for schemas this week? All right. And then I know we have one image package story that we're starting to look at, which is that when pulling, I would say there are some performance concerns when pulling, and you have a large, I'd say, number of reference images. And the thought with this story is, how could we decouple some of this performance degradation when pulling a number of images? Dennis, I'm curious if there's any early information or things that you'd like to discuss.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, so yeah, it's about, prior to this, there's now an OCI image, assuming that it was copied by a recent version of image package. There'll be an OCI image, a locations OCI image that we can use instead of the old existing, like the old logic or existing logic, which is check to see if every image or every bundle in their image has been relocated to the same repository as the bundle in question that you're pulling from. So instead of doing an amount of checks, the story is about doing a single check on an OCI image to speed up the whether the image file should be rewritten or not. And so there's this one case in particular, which is, all right, suppose it was copied with an older version of image package. So that location image doesn't exist, but it's been copied. And now suppose you're pulling with a newer version of image package. We need to be somewhat mindful, backwards compatible with that setup. And so in that case, essentially the newer version of image package doing a pull, it will check for the location's OCI image. It won't find it because it was copied with an older version of image package. And so in that case, you know, exit early. So try to do the existing logic. And if as soon as you don't find an image being referenced, exit early. And also, as a slight improvement in performance, don't, you know, suppose every image has been copied successfully. Don't sorry, if it can't find it, as a slight improvement, if it can't find it, if it hasn't been copied, no, don't check the original image location to see if it exists in its original image location. So instead of doing 2 calls, it gets at least halved to 1. And I was thinking also, in the scenario where you have a newer version of image package doing a pull, but it was copied with an older version of image package, provide some sort of UX to the user saying, hey, you know, if you want to improve, if you want to basically speed this up next time, copy with a newer version of image package, because if they do that, the OCI location image will exist. So the next time they pull, at least will be an operation of 1 instead of n. And so these are the 2 things I've outlined in this comment.
Okay, so the copy receipt was that, like, that image that you were talking about that tells you where everything should be.
Yeah.
And so refer to that instead of trying to find all the other images.
Yeah.
And then the other one was, we to date have had the strategy of, if we can't find it in the current location, try and find it in the previous location. You say, just don't do that second
Don't
step.
even bother that. Yeah. So it should
Okay.
at least get some sort of performance gain at the very least.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I'm thinking performance test should be added, an end-to-end test, and just I'm hoping to test drive this out. No functional changes, just performance changes. Except for maybe the UX warning, you know.
Yeah, that seems like a nice thing to do.
Cool. Anything else that would be helpful to discuss for the story, or sounds like you have a pretty clear idea of what you want to do? All right. Cool. Well, I think we're good for this week then. Does anyone else have anything they want to share?
I did add something to the discussion topic
Oh,
area, because we had discussed this in the office hours on May 27th. I was curious if there was any updates regarding this document.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we've been making an effort to vet out like that some of the decisions that were made there are making sense. And so far so good. We have like actually quite a bit of our existing backlog that needs to be reworked to kind of conform to these new definitions of states in which an issue can be in. Most notably is trying to make more clear what are things that we know that are not just in scope, but would be great things that if somebody wanted to pick up and contribute, that is A, obvious, and B, that they can feel confident that it would get merged. I mean, you know, we have a conversation, we work through contributions, but the spirit of it is definitely wanted, and that that we have some reasonable definition of done. So we're trying to make that part clear so that it'd be easier to find ways to contribute to the project, as well as just making it clear to us about what state different pieces of work are in. And we have a one more to do around this, which is to fold in these changes into our like public definition of how we're managing our backlog. So that's in the, I believe, the community repo right now. So that it's not just in some side Google Doc. This is a sort of a workspace that we're using in order to develop the idea. So that's what I see from my end. Are there other bits of updates around this that folks can think of?
Okay, cool. Thanks, John, for that update. Super helpful. Good to see things are coming along with that. And if you are watching this on your end and you have any input on that particular proposal, if you have experience with issuing or triaging issues or pull requests, we find any and all feedback very helpful, and we would appreciate it. And just share that within the Carvel Slack channel in the Kubernetes workspace, or you can attend this week's office hours on June 10th, which is at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So we encourage you to join us in. And with that, is there anything else that the team wanted to discuss for this particular meeting? Good. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for the good discussion here. And we hope that if you're tuning in, we see you at one of the opportunities we have available to join us live. Community meetings happening every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, unless it is closed, unless the offices are closed for a holiday here. And then we have the office hours every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time as well. All right. Well, thank you and have a good week.